Hi everyone and welcome to this week's Monday Memo. Now, I'd like to share maybe some thoughts from my early days as a finance professional when I used to believe the most successful in our profession were those with the best commitment to continue professional development, going on those technical training courses. They had the most letters after their name, most certificates, had a great attitude to balancing time for work and also time for development. But it was when I took on the dream job and got really frustrated that all of this investment in development hadn't quite paid off for me, then I really started to question what was going on here. Because yes, attitude, hard work, development, they're all really important, but the defining characteristic of those finance professionals who reach the highest levels of performance ultimately comes down to their environment. And I made this discovery as an individual contributor, but even more so as a leader nowadays, I find it actually matters more because all of us have our own environments that make us seem like we're more confident. Like, for instance, I'm doing these podcasts. I come across perhaps as an extrovert, but away from the mic or the stage where I do events and speaking or the workplace, I'm quite quiet and reserved. And that might be hard to believe. But I've got a friend who is actually in the Army Reserves or Defence Force Reserves. He's a highly respected officer. His men look to him to lead them. He's super brave. But then when he's back in his work environment, he's actually dictated to by his company schedule. And I probably have to say he's probably delivers short of his potential because he's maybe not as confident in that environment. And there's many stories I can share about others, particularly in the audience, that reach out to me on this one, and also my own experience of who we're working with. But the environment more often than not will tend to bring the best or worst out in us. And having helped a few people through this journey, it turns out that environment is less to do with the physical space we're in and more to do with two other factors. And the first of those is actually about gaining access to best practices. If you think about it, some of you might have heard of the condition of scurvy. That's where back in the olden days, the sailors used to die of it. It manifests with some sort of scarring around the mouth and so on. And when they were trying to figure out how to solve for this, they tried everything. They tried rubbing salt on their skin. They tried praying to the gods like Poseidon, abstaining from alcohol, drinking extra alcohol. And of course, big practice back in the day was using leeches. But none of it worked. And they continued to die at sea until there was a fortunate discovery that oranges, or more importantly, the vitamins from the oranges, cured the scurvy. So all along, the cure was simple, cheap and accessible. But how many of our stakeholders or even fellow colleagues are struggling to solve problems when the solution itself is simple, cheap and accessible, and it's unknown to the person who's suffering? So without those best practices, they're actually left to explore the painfully slow process of trial and error. And each lesson, like the case with scurvy, could take many years to discover. And the great thing about this day and age is that with technology, with the development of networks like LinkedIn and so on, there's so many free papers, articles, events to go to in person or even virtually, listening to podcasts like this one, reading blogs, searching, key terms and whatever to ask our questions to identify what the best practices are. And also the second element is actually, maybe associated with the last theme, is peer groups, which can be, these can be very powerful. Like, for instance, I think there was a study done where if you're sort of trying to train for a marathon, you're more likely to have more success in your training if you're successfully meeting with other people who have similar commitments or similar goals, because you're driving each other on, you're sharing knowledge, have that peer pressure or that forced sense of accountability. It's the same for finance professionals, forming peer groups that can maybe meet or regularly interact either within your organization or across organizations, or even like on LinkedIn messaging groups, on other social media platforms, where you can just sort of keep an eye out for each other and encourage each other and push each other on. And that's another sort of reason why, or actually two reasons why, if you look at the peer groups and the best practices, why we bring guest mentors onto the Strength in the Numbers show. It is really to help you peer over the fence over what's worked for them, what's not, how they've managed to get themselves into the right environment. And then, they help and they deconstruct word for word with you as they share their stories and hard-won lessons, so you can digest their knowledge and practically figure out how you can use that to go and solve more meaningful problems for your organizations and have more rewarding careers. So look, hope you found this episode really useful. If you did, please remember to subscribe and share it with your colleagues and friends. We're on all the major platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud and YouTube. And really appreciate you investing your time with us today. So until next time, take care of yourselves and let's keep on building our strength in the numbers.